So there you are. You just finished watching a movie and you really didn't enjoy it. You feel disappointed or maybe dissatisfied. So you go online to share your personal experience and the responses are, L, what are you smoking? L, I respect your opinion, but L. What you fail to realize, dumbass, is that this is a beloved film. So you are now L. For the sake of this video, we're gonna posit the term subjective discourse as discourse on the topic of our personal experiences with art. I am not exaggerating when I say that around 95% of people I see online don't understand how to have discourse about art. Let's start with the basic truth. Art is subjective. It seems like everyone has heard this, everyone has accepted it, but they don't understand what it means. How often do you see people say things like, that take sucks, or that opinion is awful? It's funny because the only explanation for this is genuine stupidity. They accept that art is subjective, but then their brain overheats once they see something they disagree with. A reason could be that they're just unsure of themselves and seek validation, but it still shows that they simply can't think something through. The truth is that discourse isn't just knowing art is subjective, but then pretending it's objective. The reason art is considered to be subjective is because everyone will perceive art differently. Now that doesn't mean that every experience is just random. The key to expressing your thoughts about art is to be honest. You will eventually start finding patterns and find that you gravitate towards certain things more than others. But that also doesn't mean that you will ever know yourself fully. You'll always eventually find yourself connecting to things that you never thought you would have and vice versa. You'll also have to take into account that you change as you grow, and things that you connected with before you might feel differently about later. The only thing you can do is be honest and seek to know why you feel the way you feel. Now you'll see how sometimes people on the internet are not honest. Of course, some people will be contrarians or just straight up haters, or maybe they'll just copy other people's opinions. But to get more specific, there are a lot of people who will just be dishonest with themselves about why they feel the way they do or how much they really like or dislike something. Not too long ago, there was a situation with Melon where people would give albums 10s despite them disliking certain songs enough to skip them. It obviously sounds ridiculous, but people on Reddit were out here saying, yo, you can't tell people how to perceive albums. And sure, they can delude themselves as much as they want, but the truth is that they're not being honest with themselves. What I see here are a bunch of people who have clearly become obsessed with the concept of rating an entire album, and now they just want to have their favorite albums. But if an album has your 9 favorite songs and then 2 that just completely suck, then just rate the individual songs. You don't have to be a wannabe Fantano. By skipping parts of the experience, you're not giving a 10 to the album, you're instead rating an alternate version of said album. It is a very real thing that people can want to like something. I've grown, but I remember doing this with the Eminem show. I can't for sure tell you why, but maybe it's because the cover looked cool, or maybe its best songs were some of my favorite songs. But you'll see here in this goddamn notepad I had where I would come up with some goofy ass rating system to convince myself that it was my favorite album. Really, the most common situation is when someone grows to not really enjoy something they used to love. And in my experience, it is hard to lose your love for something, but it's always better to be honest with yourself. Now, proving that someone would not be honest with themselves about why they feel the way they do is a lot harder to clearly identify apart from a fault in logic. Basically, convincing yourself that a piece of art has or does not have a quality when it's really the opposite. An example would be loving The Flash because it has no plot holes. You can still think The Flash is a 10 if you love the experience, and it doesn't have to be because of the plot's logical consistency. So, when one is completely honest and knowledgeable on the art and why they feel the way they do, there's pretty much nothing someone else can do. But the thing is that dumbasses think there is something they can do. And here is where the absolute brain mush discourse begins. The best reviewers on YouTube are what I just described. They are honest, knowledgeable on what they're reviewing, and insightful on their own feelings. And despite this, every single one of these reviewers has had their validity questioned when they didn't have a popular opinion. The reason for this is, of course, because the people lack logic. So let's just go over the most common types of comments I see when an online dude disagrees. Because when everyone agrees, you'll see that the discourse is a lot more productive. But it can still be bad, like saying, W take! Rating an opinion is moronic, but we've already addressed that. So the second types of comments I see are comments that believe there's some objective measure of quality for art alongside the subjective measure of quality. Like this guy saying, you provided no evidence. You can hate One Punch Man, but still admit it's good. Like, how do you even say that with a functioning brain? Calling a piece of art good is an inherently subjective statement. I can say One Punch Man is objectively a TV show. I can say it objectively has color, but whether it's good or bad is 100% subjective to the person watching. And saying provide evidence, it's like, yeah, you can provide evidence for why you feel the way you do. And I've done that. Now here we have this comment saying, bro really called Spider-Verse boring. And it's like, it's assuming that I'm trying to objectively label Spider-Verse as a boring movie. Boring is one of the most subjective words ever. At the end of the day, I didn't even call it boring, but I did experience feelings of boredom. That was just part of my experience. Anything anyone says regarding the quality of art is subjective. This isn't science, this isn't something we can test, and there's no proving someone wrong about the quality of art. So next, we have something I like to call point correcting, where someone attempts to objectively correct something a reviewer may be interpreting. Just as an example, when Dunkey in his Halo Infinite video said this,
"The final boss is in this for 3 seconds and keeps teasing a threat that never appears.
The reformation has begun."
my goofy ass decided to leave a comment saying, actually, the Reformation is just the ring repairing itself. Which honestly is not a bad thing. Obviously, it is very rare that a small correction like this will change one's view on an art piece, but it is possible. As I said, a reviewer has to have good knowledge on the art they're reviewing. The problem comes when it's flat out wrong, or when they try to take apart a whole review or argument with a number of them. These stupid ass timestamp comments, or Reddit link comments. So because they're so specific, that must mean that they're super smart guys, right? Let's look at this bottom one. So he basically lags out and is just standing still for hours, like literally not doing anything. He's just looking at Miles. Or he could be catching his breath? Perhaps the villain is overconfident? It will look very stupid when it's wrong, and sometimes it's just straight up offering their own opinion or personal interpretation. If you're 100% sure of it and it's actually based on facts, then sure. But usually it's not going to be anything more than just, actually. Which if we're talking about discourse, just make sure that you know it's actually relevant to the core points. Because again, someone feels the way they do, and that's it. After you've understood a piece of art, the only thing you can really trust is how you feel about the experience. Some people don't do ratings, but if you do, you should have a pretty good idea of the rating you would give before you really start analyzing why you feel the way you do. A lot of comments I see seem to be under the impression that reviewers have some sort of scoring system or checklist. That should not be the case. If the way you rate art is by plugging in shit to some system and then looking at the results like, oh wow, a 7.5, very cool, you're wasting your time. Again, the only thing you can trust is how you feel about an experience. Trying to appeal to some objective measure kills the validity of your opinion because art is subjective. A lot of comments I see use the words nitpicking or overly critical, and that is just not the mentality you should have when looking at reviews. Good reviewers don't rigorously analyze art and try to find things like, oh, that's an inconsistency. Minus 5 points. Again, the only thing you can trust is how you feel. And a reviewer's job is to explain why they feel the way they do. It's up to you to understand the core points and what the examples support. Of course, if it isn't clear, you can ask about it. But again, this is extremely rare because most people don't understand subjectivity. You have people who straight up do not empathize at all and use that as their argument. Like here in this YMS Dune review where he says that some of the CGI looks bad. This dude's like, bad CGI? I don't see any. And it's like, listen, even if this looks good to you, you have to accept that other people might not think that. Because yes, it is opinions. And shelling up in your own perspective genuinely makes you look like a dumbass. On that topic, you also have people who just resort to calling other people haters. People also say rage baiters. And all I have to say is make sure that you've thought about it. Because if you get it wrong, you look like and probably are a moron. You also have a lot of people who straight up misinterpret things. And I think a lot of this does have to do with lack of thinking ability, but I also think that some people may be too blinded by anger to really take a step back and think about what is being said. There are a lot of man babies who resort to saying, you just didn't get it. And like, yeah, it sounds extremely immature because it is. Open your mind and accept that people have different experiences than you. And then maybe you can start to process the points. The truth is that most people don't understand the concept of subjectivity or are too insecure about their own opinions for the discourse to be interesting. And right now you might be thinking, well, you just shut down every type of argument. What do you want us to do? Just not talk ever? Why are we even here then? And that's something I've also thought about. When we understand subjectivity, all we can really do is share our thoughts and experiences. experiences. And I've really tried to find some profound answer about why humans are drawn to share and learn, but the truth is that it's simply just curiosity. It's the same reason we as humans look for social interactions and connections. Same reason I would ask a buddy what he did over spring break. I'm also curious as to what he thinks about whatever movie or game. It's the same reason I watch all these YouTubers, because I'm curious about their perspectives and understanding what they respond to. Now yes, there are consistencies with what an artist strives for. Likewise, there are people who have way better understandings of specific mediums of art than others. For me, the writing of a story is very important, but to others it's not. Now, in question of how far passion gets you, it is about whether you notice it or not, which is why I will take some people's opinions more seriously than others. And yes, it is fun to poke fun at others and say shit like, LW, no kid, L. But at the end of the day, we are all people. And I am curious about how all of you feel. There's this comment, which, sure, funny, but you don't understand what it is to have an opinion. There is no stand your ground and, oh, this video just proved this and I have to bring up evidence to push it the other way. We're just here to share our feelings. I'm seriously tired of seeing people say something and then be like, but hey, that's just my opinion and I respect yours. Because why are you assuming I wouldn't know that? We should all know that. The internet wasn't created so we could have this Reddit war. It was created for us to connect with each other. So I hope you across the screen took something away from this video. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.